Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
A failed plan to build a bridge covered with trees and flowers over the River Thames in central London cost a total of £53 million. Transport for London inquiry showed that the Garden Bridge Trust spent £161,000 on a website and £417,000 on a gala for the abandoned project. Friday saw the issue debated in the Commons. Jessica Ewer has more.
To surround the project, overseen by Boris Johnson, after it lost support of London Mayor Sadiq Khan in April 2017. It was officially abandoned in August of that year, after a review recommended it be scrapped. In total, the Garden Bridge cost £53.5 million, which included £21.4 million in construction costs, £9.5 million went to the designers, £2.3 million on legal costs, and £1.7 million went to the Garden Bridge Trust executives. In July 2015, up to £60 million of public funding was made available to the Trust, £30 million each from Transport for London and the Department for Transport.
Well, the London Assembly has been involved in scrutinising the Garden Bridge project since the very beginning, whether it was Boris Johnson's secret trip to San Francisco to drum up money for a project which hadn't even then been tendered for by Transport for London, through to the procurement process, which we believe was rigged in favour of the Heatherwick design, getting the minutes out of the Garden Bridge Trust, which was a very secretive arm's-length organisation set up in order to deliver the project. And of course, we've been looking at Transport for London's wider role in all of this. They were meant to be overseeing this project. They were meant to be the custodians and the guardians of public money. And they seem to have failed in that responsibility, because £43 million worth of public money has now been wasted with absolutely nothing to show for it.
TfL will now pay a final £5.5 million of public money to the Trust as part of the scheme's cancellation agreement, which the transport body says was 40% lower than what it could have been.
I'm joined by Rupa Huck, the Labour MP for Ealing Central and Acton. Thank you very much for joining us. Now, the Garden Bridge, who do you think is responsible for the waste of money as you see it?
I think part of the problem is there's no clear accountability structure of where this came from, and even to investigate it now. But it was a Joanna Lumley idea, and she is a national treasure. But it was her idea to do a Diana Memorial Bridge. It was going to be her gift to the nation. And I think Sadiq Khan finally pulled the plug after, in the beginning, Ken Livingstone didn't want it either, but in between, Boris Johnson sort of rolled over to everything she wanted and pretty much gave a blank cheque to this project.
But it ended up being a very expensive treasure, didn't it?
Not a spade in the ground, no construction at all. And this is, I mean, we all make mistakes, but £46 million of public money is a pretty big mistake to make.
I remember when Boris Johnson went in front of the Assembly last year, I was there in the room at the time, he was unapologetic. You know, he was saying, you know, he denied that there was any problem with the procurement process. He was saying that his only regret was that he didn't get it started sooner so that he could finish it. So he thinks actually it should have gone ahead. It would have been this great, you know, sign of civic pride.
I mean, astonishing nonchalance from him. I think he conveniently said he couldn't remember on a lot of things when people said that the warning signs were there. There were a lot of alarm bells ringing from the start. But also, this is a man who this week has caused great offence by this expression. I didn't even used to know. It's very rude, apparently. Spaffed up the wall. The money that was spent on the historic child abuse inquiry. It looks like he's pissed down the drain a whole load of public money here with nothing to show for it. And also, it's not even clear. 30 million of that, the debate I had on Friday was with a transport minister, came from DFT, but it's not clearly a transport project at all. There's no clear benefit. And it's kind of privatisation. I first became aware of it when a constituent wrote to me in 2015 when I was first elected and said, I work at Temple, they're going to build this privatised bridge. It's going to block the view of St Paul's Cathedral. I mean, the whole funding model was completely wrong. Cart before horse. Yeah.
I mean, obviously, we don't condone the phrase that Boris obviously used that you just said on air. But in terms of what happens next, you know, there have been lots of reports. There's been the London Assembly looked into it. Margaret Hodge looked into it, the Charity Commission. I was watching your debate the other day in Parliament. The Transport Secretary, Chris Grayling, wasn't there. You had a Transport Minister, Andrew Jones, answering questions. He was very clear that he didn't think that it's necessary to have another inquiry. So where does it go from here?
Look, I think the amount of money spent, it dwarfs a lot of these other scandals. Kids Company was 18 million. The Spencer scandal was 2.5 million of taxpayers' money. This is way bigger than any
But
of
you
those.
need the government to agree for there to be some kind of public inquiry.
The government says it's TfL. TfL says it's they can't be investigated by the NAO. It seems like a whole big pass the parcel thing, and it was run under a charitable trust that's very opaque with its governance structures.
Yeah.
And again, there's lots of questions.
Do you think the government's kind of closing ranks? You know, obviously it was a Conservative mayor who started that project.
I do.
You know,
I mean, I don't know.
painted in a good
some
light.
people think. I think it was maybe more cock-up than conspiracy. But either way, we don't want these mistakes to happen again because there are big projects at the moment, like the Crystal Palace National Sports Park. In fact, I think also, laudable as it is, the Holocaust National Memorial, they're all funded by this same structure. So if things go wrong, we need a proper chain of accountability.
Well,
because
Jackie,
heads should roll, but they're not going to, it looks like.
Jackie, I'll bring you in. Do you think heads should roll? You know, we're talking about a former Conservative mayor of London. Do you think that he should be held to account? Who should be held to account?
Well, I think Rupert's actually highlighted the real issue there, is that nobody is directly accountable. If the book doesn't stop with one person, then it's very easy for anyone to evade responsibility. And clearly, there have been too many links in the chain here, and in the meantime, like you say, £46 million has been wasted. And there really should be some transparency, so actually highlight where things have gone wrong, so that we can learn lessons, as Rupert's just said.
But how does that happen? What would you like to see happen now to actually, you know, get people held to account for this?
Well, I used to sit on the Public Accounts Committee. I think that's a very appropriate forum for which to scrutinise what is actually an appalling waste of public money.
So is this one for Meg Hillier to
I think so, yeah.
Now, Wes, you know, there are some who say, actually, you know, the idea of having this great structure on the Thames, you know, would actually have been something that could enhance London. You know, we see in other countries that they, you know, build great monuments and what have you. You know, surely there is an element of actually it could have been a good thing.
Well, firstly, if we were going to put a Thames River crossing in, I wouldn't have put it right slap bang in the centre of London, which is already pretty well served. I think there are other parts of London where, you know, particularly speaking from our neck of the woods towards Essex, that would benefit from a number of crossings. I think the second thing is, though, is about political judgment and leadership. So we all understand what political pressure feels like, but just because the National Treasure rolls in with lots of big names behind them and the London Evening Standard all saying this is great and anyone who cancels this or challenges it is wrong, you know, sometimes you've just got to look hard at the numbers, at the business plan, at the planning. The fact that Boris didn't do this, the fact that he then says afterwards, oh, I don't recall, I mean, that kind of sums up his attention to detail. And, you know, full credit to Sadiq Khan, because when he came in, he knew this was a political hot potato. He knew there was a bad smell about it. He could have just ploughed on. Instead, he got Margaret Hodge in to do the forensic analysis of the numbers, realised it was onto a hiding to nothing, and was prepared to risk the wrath of Joanna Lumley and pull the project. So good on him.
Well, Rupert, just last question to you. On that point of Sadiq Khan, you know, I remember during the mayoral election, you know, him talking about this as being one of Boris's vanity projects. There is an element of political game playing, isn't there? Because, you know, it helps, I suppose, a Labour mayor to say, you know, this project ended up being a shambles, ended up being a waste of money.
I mean, look, there's a pattern of Boris mistakes. The cable car that no one went on, the buses that were overheating. It was mentioned there, £10,000 on a trip to San Francisco. He wanted to put an Apple store on this bridge and it wouldn't have balanced, apparently. There wasn't enough acreage for that. There were going to be 2 Tesco Metros. It was going to be the second biggest
I'm going to have to stop you there because we're running out of time.
It was always unrealistic.
Terribly sorry. That's it for this week.